to our third and final session of this mindful meditation experience. I always say that it never really ends. It's just a continuation of a process, hopefully, that we make as part of our life. And hopefully you've been practicing throughout the week. Okay, I see some nods, some head nods. Okay, that's good. That's good. Um, were there any unusual experiences from the practice? Is there any resistance that came up or happy thoughts floating by? You let them go on by and then come right back to you, to breathing? Okay. We'll have a lot of different things that'll come up in our minds. I think the main thing is the consistency of the practice. I always tell people it's not how long you do it. If it's 3 minutes, I think the key is to do it every day. And then you might expand to 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, like we've been doing some extended times. And our minds will wander, and our body will say, I can't do this anymore. And then we'll just say, that's an interesting thought. Let me go back to my breath and observe the breathing again. I was sharing that I used to go to a Spirit Rock Meditation Center, which is in Marin County, and we'd have extended periods of mindfulness. I mean, like we'd be in there sometimes an hour at a time, and then we'd have silence when we went to dinner, and when we did our chores, and we'd occasionally speak with the counselor or facilitator there just to have them check in to see how we're doing and then go right back to the silence. And first 3 days was just excruciating, if you're there for a week or 10 days. And then after a while, they just settle into it, and then by the time it's time to leave, you don't want to go. It's a whole different way of being. So anyway, tonight, I'm going to share a little bit about how sometimes we go on autopilot, just unconscious in our way of living. And then we're going to have 2 practices. The first one will be 10 minutes or so, and then the second will be about 15 minutes. Then we're going to take maybe a 10-minute break, and then we're going to do what I usually do in this third class, what I call the raisin meditation. If you saw some raisins out there in a little cup, then after the break, you'll pick up one of the cups that has the raisins in it. That'll enhance our own abilities to stay present to all of our experiences. And then if we have time remaining, we'll close out with a brief mindfulness practice. And I'll just say a few closing words for tonight. And then hopefully you can walk out in silence, and if we get outside the door, you want to talk, that's fine. If you want to stay in that space, that's perfectly okay as well. So I think one of the things we do is that we want to wake up to this autopilot that oftentimes we are on in our life. And I share a story about a guy, we'll just call him Alex. And Alex trudged slowly up the stairs to his room, and he was still mulling over his day's work as he undressed and started putting on his night clothes, I guess, pajamas, whatever they were. And his mind was hopping from subject to subject. I don't know if you ever had that experience, but his mind was hopping from one place to the next. And soon his mind latched on to a job that he needed to do out of town, the following afternoon. And before dithering over the best way to get there by car to avoid the traffic, he just remembered something. Oh, the car. He realized that his car insurance was due for renewal, and he'd have to use his credit card tomorrow. And he thought about, oh, my God, my card. He didn't know whether he remembered to pay his card on time, so he was thinking about that. And then he remembered the printed bill with the items, reserving the hotel rooms for a big event that was taking place a couple months down the road, so his mind went to that. And before he realized it, he was thinking about his daughter's upcoming wedding, and then he heard a shout from his wife that said, "Alex, are you ready yet? We're all waiting, and it's time to go." And with a start, Alex realized he had gone upstairs for a change for a party. He wasn't supposed to go up there to change for bed, but and he wasn't suffering from any kind of dementia or anything, or had a bad memory, but he had just went on automatic pilot. I don't know if you've ever been through that experience where you're just kind of going through the motions, and his mind had gotten hijacked by the concerns of his day. And like I said, it's a problem that many of us, I can speak for myself, are familiar with. You ever off to go to a particular location, and then they end up taking a different route because you're not even thinking. Sometimes I'll be coming home or want to go to a particular place, and I'll automatically, go to where I've always gone because I'm not conscious about what I'm doing. I'm on automatic pilot. Or you start peeling potatoes and you realize that originally we're going to cook rice, instead. And so habits are frighteningly subtle, yet can be incredibly powerful. Without warning, they can sometimes seize control of our life and drive us in a direction totally different than what we may have intended. So it's almost as if the mind is in one place and the body is in another. And then the story of the psychologist, I call him Daniel Simmons, and he had done many experiments that illustrate the extent to which we miss seemingly obvious things through automatically paying attention elsewhere. And in one of the studies, he set up an experiment in which an actor stopped an ordinary person on the street, and the actor just asked the guy, for directions. And as the person was giving directions, two people carrying a door just kind of rudely, barged right between the actor and the pedestrian. And at the moment, the person's view was blocked by the door. And the actor asking for directions was switched to another actor. And the new actor looked totally different. His jacket was a different color, a different style. One had a sweater on, the other one didn't. One person had a short haircut, the other one had a long haircut, and they even sounded differently. But despite all of those differences, around half the people questioned actually noticed the switch. In other words, only half the people noticed there was a change. And I think this easily shows how we can often be absorbed in our busyness and how powerful the side effects can be. And it's almost as if our minds are purged of consciousness and leaving the autopilot in full control. So I think mindfulness can help interrupt that automatic pilot by increasing our awareness, because that's what I feel the mindfulness is about, just becoming more and more aware of what's happening to us, around us, in our minds. And so let's take a moment. We're going to take about 10 minutes just to do a practice, and I'll go through the instructions or guidance on how to do it. And there's no right way to do it. This is just my suggested way and what I learned. And as I mentioned before, some people have a hard time sitting, so you can get up and walk around and have a walking meditation if you like to do that as well. But just really be aware of the breathing. But normally, like I said, we sit erect, in our chair, and if possible, we just bring our back a little bit away from the rear of the chair, but our spine is self-supporting, but we're still in a relaxed and comfortable position. And we want our feet to be flat on the floor. And you can close your eyes or simply lower your gaze and focus your attention on your breath as the breath flows in and flows out. And while you're paying attention to your breath, also stay in touch with the different sensations of each breath in and each breath that goes out. And we're not judging it, we're just being totally present to it. We're simply observing the breath without looking for anything special to happen. We're just aware. And we don't have to alter our breathing in any way. And as inevitably happens when we are focusing on the breath and seeking to stay on the breath, our mind will wander. And the idea is just to notice when this happens and then simply bring your attention back to your breath. You don't give yourself a hard time for saying, oh, I messed up or anything like that. Because the very act of realizing that your mind has wandered and then you bring your attention back to your breath without judgment is really central to the practice of mindfulness meditation. And sometimes your mind will become very calm, very still, like a still pond. And other times it may not. You just accept either case with equal equanimity or observance. And even if you get a sense of absolute stillness, it may only last for a short period of time. Emotions may come up, thoughts may come up. And when those things happen, you just notice them and bring yourself back to the breath. So we're going to take this 10 minutes, and when you hear the bell, you just let your eyes open and just take in the room around you. So we focus on that breath. Each in-breath and each out-breath. And we simply observe the breathing. We're aware of maybe our abdomen as it expands and contracts as we breathe in and as we breathe out. Focus on your breath. Notice the sensations in your nostrils with each in-breath and each out-breath. Keep your attention on your breathing. If you find your mind wandering away from your breath, thinking of a thought or something that happened yesterday or what you need to do tomorrow, Just observe that. And come right back to the breath. Keep your attention on your breath as you breathe in and breathe out. When your attention moves away from the breath, just observe wherever it is and then bring it right back, attending your mind to your breath. Keep your attention on your breath. When your mind wanders, simply observe the wandering and then come back and give your attention to your breathing. Someone told me that if there's too much information sloshing around in your mind, that our working memory begins to overflow. And sometimes when that happens, we get stressed. And sometimes life begins to trickle right through our fingers. And oftentimes we'll feel powerless and our mind starts every so often just freezing up on us. And we may become indecisive and increasingly become aware or become unaware of what's going on around us. And there are times that we may become forgetful, sometimes a little exhausted because there's so much going on in our mind and we get at our wits' end. And the person likened it to a computer that sometimes it gets slower and slower as we open up more and more apps. Kind of like my phone. If I open up too many apps, things start slowing down a little bit. And at first, we may not notice it, but after you reach a certain point, past a certain threshold, the computer or the phone will get more sluggish. And it may even freeze up. Hopefully it won't crash, but sometimes that may even happen. And I think that's what happens in our minds when we have a lot going on in it. And we become on that autopilot, just let it pile up on us. As I mentioned, I think stress is a big thing that our society and many people experience. Sometimes they just accept it as a way of life. And when we have stressful times, we may try to head it off by trying to suppress it. We might try to argue with ourselves and say something like, I shouldn't feel this way. But when we think about thoughts and feelings and emotions that come up like that, sometimes we just make it worse. And then, like I said, sometimes we get on autopilot and we get overloaded with too many thoughts and memories and anxieties and tasks. And just like the computer or the phone, got too many apps open, our mind will slow down. So sometimes we may become exhausted or anxious or frantic and maybe even dissatisfied with life. And once again, just like that computer or phone, we may freeze or we may even crash temporarily. And I think whenever we reach a point where we're overloaded, and that overload has seized up our conscious mind, it gets even more difficult to reverse the process by trying to think our way out of it. So for this is like yet another program in our computer, and we just put more and more thoughts on top of each other. But one of the solutions is, instead of trying to think our way out of it, we might want to think outside of the cycle as soon as we notice it. As soon as we notice all these thoughts coming up in our minds, we step away from it. I think that's one of the things about meditation. We can observe ourselves. We can observe our thoughts. What they call the witness part of us. And this is the first step in learning how to deal with life a little more skillfully, because oftentimes we'll let the thoughts take us over. So what this involves is really training ourselves to notice when we're on autopilot and when that's taking us over, so that we can then make a choice about what we want our mind to focus on, because we always have the choice to figure out where we want to put our attention to. So oftentimes to get there, we got to close down all the other programs, the apps that are kind of running in the background of our mind. And this is the first stage, I believe, in regaining our mindfulness and returning to the basics of just being. And meditation like this really is helping us relearn how to focus our awareness on one thing at a time. I've come to realize that, some people talk about the idea of multitasking, and I realize there's no such thing. We just move from one task to another, to another, to another. And, the most productive people focus on one thing at a time. I was supposed to, let's do another quick practice, then we're going to take a break and do our raise-in meditation. In fact, let's take a little stretch break first. We're going to go about 15 minutes on this one. I'm particularly conscious of my breath because I was mentioning that my allergies more than ever have been acting up. So I'm really aware of the importance of breathing. And when you don't have full control over it, or things not come through so clearly as it used to, you have a greater appreciation for breath and how important it is to life. So honor the breath, which is what we're going to do for the next few minutes. Okay, let's take our seat. Again, our feet are flat on the floor and sitting up straight, back maybe slightly removed from the back of the chair. We're alert but still reasonably comfortable. And so let's take this time to, again, focus our attention on our in-breath and out-breath. Notice how your belly expands and contracts. It may do it ever so slightly. Yet as you keep your attention on it, you are fully aware of the sensation and the movement of Your belly rising and falling with each in-breath and out-breath. Keep your attention on your breath. When your mind goes off and wanders away from the breath, just observe it. Observe the thought where your mind is without judgment or criticism, and bring your attention back to the breath. Continue to keep your attention on your breath. If your mind begins to wander, bring it back to the breath. Keep your focus on your breathing. keep your attention on your breath. Oh, y'all made it. Nobody ran out the room. Well, I thought we'd take a 10-minute break and then come back and do this last exercise. When you come back in, there's some cups on a table outside the door. Pick up one. It has like 2 or 3 raisins in it. You only need one, but if you want to eat the others, that's fine. And we'll go ahead and do this other meditation practice, really to deepen our awareness of all the stuff that's happening in us that we often don't think about. So, see you in 10. All right, we're going to do our last exercise for tonight, and our last exercise for this 3-part mindfulness meditation experience. So, I was mentioning earlier how it's important to keep our attention on one thing at a time, or keep our attention focused. And as I was thinking about that, I realized that, in this world where we all have these phones, they are an attention killer. And the way they create those apps, they are created with the specific intent to keep you on the phone as long as possible. And there's an actual science that these guys come up with when they're creating them to kind of capture your brain, to almost get you addicted to them. And so I have to sometimes even watch myself, I say, wait a minute, I feel like I need to have this on all the time, checking something. It's the email, or, what's the latest on YouTube, and it's, I don't think it's good for, I know it's not good for my attention. I don't think it's good for anybody's, ability to focus. And I think setting those aside and really practicing this mindfulness will help get us back to being more focused, so we can stay more attentive to the task at hand. And so with that in mind, we're going to, what I do call the raisin meditations. And so I'm going to give you some instructions, and it's like several steps, like 8 steps, 8 stages. And each stage that we do something, we'll invite you to stay with it about 20 to 30 seconds, and then I'll move on to the next stage. But the whole idea is just to be totally aware of focus on that object and the different ways that we can determine what its character is. See, we'll talk about the look, the feel, the taste, because oftentimes we're so distracted, we're not totally attentive to what's right there in front of us that's taking place. So I'm going to invite you first to just take, one of the raisins, and sometimes we do it with nuts. And I saw some raisins that had some like sour candy in it, but I didn't bring those. I just got the regular raisins. But I was tempted, but I didn't. Huh? Oh, I thought somebody said something. So I was tempted, but at first I couldn't find the regular raisins on the shelf, and then somebody told me where they were. So I saved you from, an experiment. But just take the raisins and just hold it in the palm of your hand. Or if you want, you can hold it between your thumb and your fingers. And just focus on it. A lot of times when we grab a raisin or a piece of candy or a grape, we just kind of mindfully grab it and just put it in our mouth. But approach it as if you've never seen one of these before in your life. And feel, even its weight. Can you sense the weight of it? Probably very light. Just look at it, and is it casting a shadow in any way on your palm? It's kind of dark in here, so it's not too many shadows, but just to fully feel it. Its texture. And just focus on it for a moment. And let's just look at it now. You may have just been feeling it before, but just look at it. and really take the time to see the raisin. You want to see it as if you're just coming across one for the very first time in your life. Look at it with great care. Give it your full attention. Explore every part of it. Does yours have a little stem-like thing coming out of it? Just examine the highlights of it. The ridges, the folds. Kind of roll the raisin now between your fingers. Explore its texture. How does it feel? How does it feel between your forefinger and perhaps your thumb? Maybe just switch hands now and see if it's a little different in the other hand. Now holding it under your nose. See if you notice anything with each in-breath through your nostrils. Does it even have a scent? If so, let it fill your awareness. And if it doesn't have any scent, or very little, notice this as well. And slowly take the raisin and just bring it toward your mouth. If you want to get a freshman, you can do that. This has been really touched a lot. And just notice how your hand and your arm, where you put it. And just gently place it in your mouth. Don't chew. I have to take mine out of my mouth because I can't talk at the same time. But notice how your tongue receives it. And as it's on your tongue, just explore the sensations and how it feels on your tongue. Just explore it in your tongue for a moment. Just leave it there for a little while, for just maybe 10 or 15 seconds. And just be totally focused on that raisin on your tongue and feel everything you can about it. when you're ready, just consciously take a bite into the raisin. And notice the effects on it. Notice how it feels and tastes in your mouth. Notice the taste that it releases. Feel its texture as you're chewing it with your teeth. Chew it, don't swallow it yet, just chew it. And just notice what's happening with your mouth. Now as you're starting to swallow it, see if you can detect the first intention to swallow it. Experience swallowing it with full awareness before you actually let it all down your throat. Notice what your tongue does as you do this. See if you can follow the sensation of swallowing the raisin. If you can, sense it as it moves down your throat, even in your stomach if you can. If you swallow a little at a time, notice each time it goes down, the sensation, until it's all gone. Notice what your tongue does after you've swallowed it. Finally, spend a few moments just registering the aftermath of this eating of the raisin. Notice if there's an aftertaste. Notice if there's an absence of the raisin, and what does it feel like? Do you have a desire to eat another? It's all about awareness of all that's happening with this small object. Giving it our total attention as we look at it, as we feel it, as we taste it, as we swallow it. Did you notice anything as you did this? I've been holding mine for so long, I gotta eat it. So I know it seemed like a really silly or simple exercise, but anything come up for you when you were doing that? I don't think we really eat like this most of the time. When you get the mic, because it'll help. We record, so it helps to hear.
I was thinking how helpful this would be for me to do this a lot more often to help me eats more slowly and more mindfully instead of, throwing it down and eating too much too fast. So it would be a good exercise to do on a regular basis, actually. It
Yeah.
requires a lot of patience.
Yeah, I think the more we do it, we probably become more conscious of it. It takes that awareness, because I think a lot of times, I'm like me, okay, I got somewhere to be. Let me hurry up, eat, build myself up, go. But sometimes just slow down. You just become more fully engaged in what's going on and fully experience it. And I think it carries over into our attention to the other things that we do as well, rather than kind of mindlessly going through, eating or mindlessly going through the day. So I think it has a way of just increasing our awareness of everything. Sometimes someone says the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And the way, if we focus on becoming more mindful of each thing that we do, it spreads over to our life. And I think we fully engage in it than we normally would, just going through the motions as we often do. Anyone else had any experience? Yes, take.
Here I go.
I don't much like raisins, but it was delicious.
See, you never know.
For me, that was the best raisin I've ever had. And the other thing is, it really made me focus. I feel more focused than I have all day. So that was a great exercise.
Cool. Somebody had their hand up over there. Oh, yeah, right.
It reminded me of what I learned in Weight Watchers. They say pay attention to when you eat.
Yeah.
Slow down. Savor every bite. And that way you lose the weight, because I lost 120 pounds.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And so it helps me just to be mindful of what I'm doing, to pay attention. So when I do my gardening, it's the same thing. I'm at one with those plants. I love my plants. So it puts me into a state of mindfulness.
Yes.
And photography is my favorite hobby. I can't have my mind wander. If that lens is not focused correctly, that picture's not going to come out right.
Yes.
So that's a type of mindfulness, because it grounds me. And but paying attention to my eating, they say turn your television off. Don't listen to the radio or anything else. Just eat mindfully.
Yes.
I don't always do that. Sometimes I watch a TV show that I really like at the same time when I'm eating. And it's very unhealthy to do that, actually, because of digestion and all of that stuff that happens to our body.
Yeah.
So the mindfulness helps us to heal whatever is going on in our body, whatever's going on in my body. It helps to heal the cells. I always use the affirmation that Myrtle Fillmore said, I'm a divine child of God, therefore I can't be sick. I do not inherit illness.
Yes.
So my doctors told me, you've healed faster than anyone ever since the recorded history of medical history. But they don't realize I pray, I meditate, I visualize, I eat the right food, I try to walk, and I pay attention. I didn't do this when I was younger. So now I've learned to pay attention to things. Even when I'm talking to someone, if I pay attention to what they're saying, then I have a better relationship with that person at the time.
Yes.
That's just been my experience with mindfulness.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Appreciate that. That's very helpful. Okay. Well, we're heading toward the end of our session for this evening. And, what I suggest is, just do this awareness practice every so often to help you focus on that one thing at a time, to get our minds, I think, working at optimal levels. So I'm just going to close out with a few words to share with you and to leave with you before we leave for the evening. When we talk about mindfulness, it's not about detachment. It's really about accepting what is. I think I mentioned earlier that I think a lot of our suffering comes from trying to make things different than what they are by force, but acceptance gives us a sense of, okay, it may not be what I would like, but it is what it is. So I can't, if I rail against it, I'm just making it have more power in my life. So when we talk about acceptance, the root word comes from the same words as capture and perception. It simply means to receive or take hold of something. And through this, it also means to grasp or to understand. Acceptance, in a sense, allows our mind to embrace the true, deep understanding of how things really are. And so acceptance is a pause. It's a period of allowing, of letting it be. It's a period of seeing clearly. And acceptance, I think, takes us off the hair trigger so that we're less likely to make a knee-jerk reaction. I think when we get into this habit, sometimes things happen that we don't like, and there may be a tendency to react immediately. And sometimes that's not always a good thing, depending upon the circumstance. And I think acceptance allows us to become fully aware of the difficulties that we may have with all their painful nuances, to respond to them in a more skillful way. It gives us, I think, more time and space to respond. And often we may even discover the wisest way of responding is really to do nothing at all. Sometimes we just say, I need to do something like right now, but maybe the best thing to do at the moment is nothing. So that way you can come up with the best response rather than one that's kind of automatic or reactionary. Often the doing mode is what we are used to. We got to do something. And it's not necessarily proactive. As I said, it's usually reactive. And oftentimes we remain a servant to our automatic reactions. And that's not always a good thing. So I think in short, mindful acceptance gives us choices. I think I've come to aware that if we're not aware, we don't really have a choice. Oftentimes we're just reacting based upon our habits that we may have developed over time. But with awareness, we say, oh, wait a minute, there's a multitude of ways I can respond or not respond to this situation. So I just leave those words, and I'm going to read something from Rumi, who's a Sufi poet. And I think he summed up best of all when he wrote something called The Guest House. And he wrote that this being human is a guest house. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house, empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Anyway, that's Rumi. Something to consider. And I don't know what our time is. I always like to leave 8:22. Let's do one last, say, 3-minute meditation. And then once I cling the bell, you can leave in silence. And then if you want to go outside the door, you can speak amongst yourselves if you want or not. It's up to you. And I'm just going to lay those who might be watching online, if you want to support us with your gift, you can do so by texting slcworld.org and go to our webpage and click the donate tab, or you go and text us, I should say, to SLC Love to 44321, or go to our website, slcworld.org, and donate. And for those who would like to leave a love offering, I think the basket's on the way out, but it's entirely up to you. It's strictly up to what you are guided to support our Spiritual Life Center with. So let's take this moment and again, our feet flat on the floor. Once again, going back to our breathing, focusing on the breath. Give your attention to each in-breath and out-breath. If feelings come up, thoughts come up, just observe them and simply go back to the breath. Focus on the breath. invite you to go in peace and silence. And if you want to stick around for a while, you can do that too. And thank you all for hanging out with me for these last 3 weeks. We'll have to do it again.